Greetings, friends and fellow travelers in this journey of yoga. I am really excited to welcome you to this exploration that we're about to undertake together. And I know that we're all coming from different backgrounds and different experiences and different expectations about what this training is about and what you're going to learn. And I'm just thrilled to explore this terrain together. I think each of your unique perspectives is going to add dimensions and depth to our collective exploration. And so I'm looking forward to getting to know you all and to exploring together. And I'm sorry I can't be there with you live today. Where I am in India right now is the middle of the night at this time. So it just wasn't realistic for me to be here and awake and cohesive and coherent. So I've recorded this video because I want to give you a taste of where we're going to be going together in the area of yoga philosophy, yoga cosmology. And I just want to start by saying that I came into this yoga. I came to touch yoga and experience yoga myself the first time I went to India. I arrived in September of 2000, which is 24 years ago. And at that time, I had heard the word yoga, but I didn't really have any idea what it meant. I knew it referred to some kind of stretchy thing. And what I encountered in India at that time, I didn't understand what its relationship was with yoga. What I encountered was a vibrancy of spiritual life, a interweaving of the inner dimension of reality and the outer dimension of reality, a lived collective celebratory reverence for the forces and the consciousness that creates the universe and sustains the universe and breathes breath into our lungs and offers us the gift of life. There's an interactive engagement with that reality that's alive in India in a way that just knocked me off my feet. And I continue, I have and I continue to have just a deep reverence and gratitude for that collective cultivation of energy and what it offers to the world and what it offers to us. There's kind of the embodied communal life of India, spiritual life of India, which is diverse and eclectic and explores spirituality in a million different ways. It dives down every nook and cranny of spiritual exploration. And then there's the through line of the teachings of yoga. And if you think about the explorations of yoga over thousands of years, everything that we know, everything that comes to us today, comes in two ways. One is through word of mouth, oral traditions. So teachings that have been passed down from a teacher to a student who becomes a teacher and teaches another student, like that, for thousands of years. And these teachings are preserved, held within these traditions, but also each teacher embodies and teaches and explores and expands and expounds on the particular teachings in their own unique way. And these teachings are happening in different areas where people speak different languages and where the terrain is different, the earth is different, the local indigenous relationship to the earth and the stories about creation and humanity's relationship to the earth are different. And all of these things influence the development of the teachings of yoga. Now, at some time during the thousands of years through which these teachings of yoga were flowing from person to person like a river, and a river that passes through various terrain, various different kinds of sediment, various different kinds of vegetation on the banks, various different ecosystems. Just like that, just like a river passes through different ecosystems, these teachings of yoga have passed through different teachers and different languages and different iterations, different colors, different flavors, different personalities. At various times in this flow, somebody wrote something down, or there were certain texts that were kind of codified orally and remembered word for word. So whether somebody actually wrote them down in some kind of script or they were just memorized and passed word for word, as opposed to a teaching which is kind of more spontaneous and in the moment. So, at various times this happened. There was a kind of a collection of the wisdom of that moment and a codification or a writing down or a kind of not necessarily permanence, but like, let's capture this, let's hold this. And these are the teachings that are held in texts that we have heard about. The Upanishads, maybe you've heard about. They're snapshots of the flow of spiritual wisdom through India that were taken, and there's Upanishads that are very old and there's Upanishads that are more recent. The Bhagavad Gita, you may have heard about, which is a text that is a synthesis of different yogic teachings that were circulating around at the time. It's an incredible synthesis. It's a synthesis that's in song, that has a meter, that has a rhythm, that has tonality, that has wordplay. It's just absolutely incredible. And the Bhagavad Gita is embedded within a larger work called the Mahabharata. These are times when somebody says, or some group of people say, let's collect what we have of the teachings of yoga that are out there at this moment. Let's collect it all and let's synthesize it and let's create a work out of it that will be preserved. There's the Yoga Sutras, similar situation there. Most of these texts, first of all, even though we say Patanjali wrote the Yoga Sutras, nobody actually knows who Patanjali was, whether it was one person or several people. There's not a real sense of a historical Patanjali. Most of these texts, nobody knows who wrote them. Or even if there's a name, there's not much historical understanding. The person who's credited with writing the Mahabharata is named Vyas, and Vyas just basically means compiler. So the sense of authorship that we see in the modern West, where somebody writes something and they claim it and they say, I did this, this is mine, that's not really there in the yoga traditions. It's much more a sense that the wisdom leads, the teachings lead, and somebody channeled them, somebody digested them and metabolized them and offered them in their own unique way. And these teachings have to do with the nature of the universe, the nature of the human soul, the nature of the human soul in relationship to the universe, the nature of the human soul in relationship to other human souls, and in relationship to the earth, and in relationship to death and suffering. Some of the texts of yoga are very related. Well, we could say that the Buddha was a yogi. He came from the yogic tradition. His exploration was going on simultaneous to, thousands of other yogic explorers at that time, and he had a specific realization that was collected and codified and developed into a religion. But his realization that life is suffering, and his quest for a way to heal, to deal with, to cope with, and to transform the experience of suffering, or to penetrate the experience of suffering. It's a common quest in yoga. I mean, that's essentially, at different levels, yoga is about, who am I? What is this world? Why do you exist as separate from me? Why is there pain? Why is there death? Why is there time? All these fundamental questions that are essential to our understanding ourselves and the way we live our lives and our relationships and our behaviors and our beliefs, like all these very fundamental things. That's what yoga was about. And again, it was thousands of people through thousands of years, probably millions of people through thousands of years, exploring those questions and seeking answers in their own way. I like to think of yoga as a set of practices that's part of a process, that's part of a movement. Practices that support a movement towards a state. And the word yoga has been used in all three of those ways. It's been used to describe a set of practices. It's been used to describe the state, the state of yoga, the state to which those practices are leading. And it's been used to describe the process. Yoga is compared in the traditions of yoga to a war, a battle. The word yuddha in Sanskrit. So it's like a struggle of awakening, of illumination, of realization of what truly is the truth of the universe, the truth of God, the truth of the self. The emergence of that truth and the realization of that truth in the face of forces that would inhibit that realization, that would create delusion and confusion and untruth and falsehood. So it's seen as a kind of a battle between opposing forces that support growth and realization and forces that inhibit it. It's also spoken about as a yatra, a journey, a progression. As you journey, a journey has a beginning and an end and a middle. And that middle, the process of the journey is iterative. There's growth that happens. Where you are on a journey today is not where you were yesterday. What you know on a journey today is more than what you knew yesterday. And you can't unknow something that you experience on the journey. It can't unhappen. It can't be undone. Every step, every forward movement that you have on your journey has happened. It's established. And each day is built upon the day before and the day before and the day before. So this sense of progression, of movement that cannot be undone. Even if you go backwards, even if you walk forward 20 miles and then turn around and walk back, you have now walked forward and back. Walking back doesn't undo the forward. So everything that happens in the path of yoga is iterative in that way. It builds on itself and nothing can be undone. No experience, no realization, no occurrence on the path of yoga can be undone. And we are always progressing in our awakening, even when we believe that we're going backwards or that we're falling down or that we are stuck or entangled. There is no stuck in yoga. There is no stop. It's always a progress. Everything is always moving forward. Yoga is also spoken of as a yajna. The word yajna is central to the understanding of yoga from the oldest Sanskritic text, the Rig Veda Samhita. The Rig Veda Samhita is all about yajna, and this word flows through the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita and the Puranas and the whole yoga tradition. The word yajna means sacrifice. And sacrifice in the sense that the entire universe exists and is sustained and is transformed by the offering of one thing to another. And in the context of yoga, it's the offering of this limited, confused, deluded personality self. The offering of that to the higher wisdom, to the truth, to the expanded reality. One of the understandings of yoga is that who we actually are is limitless. Limitless light, limitless wisdom, limitless truth, limitless fearlessness, unharmability. That's the essence of our being, is eternal and unharmable. And we come on purpose into this world of duality, of pleasure, pain, hot, cold, up, down, black, white, everything dual, and confusion about who we are, confusion about whether we are defined by our accomplishments or whether we're defined by something deeper than that. Confusion about what our value, our inherent value is, or the inherent value of others. Confusion about what safety is. And that confusion leads to conflict and strife and pain and suffering, collectively, individually and collectively. This sacrifice is the willingness of the eternal radiant being that we are to come down into this confused house of entanglements, the willingness to come down here and to submit ourselves, to cut ourselves off from the knowing who we are, the willingness to forget. Memory itself, we think of memory, I remember something. Memory, as we understand it in our human incarnation, is actually the absence of memory. Because I remember some things, but I don't remember everything. But everything exists. Everything from the time that, even on the human level, from the time that you were in the womb, you were in the womb. You were born. You were 1 year old. All the things that happened to you happened, and yet you don't remember all of them. So memory itself is limiting, but beyond memory is the reality. And we consent to this incarnation with limited memory, where we can't actually remember who we were before we were born. And what exists deep within us. We're kind of cut off from being able to access the lived, embodied, sustained experience of the divinity that we are, the eternity that we are. This is the sacrifice. And through this sacrifice, we offer ourselves to this, the soul offers itself into this incarnation as a sacrifice. And then during the course of a life, the individual confused being can choose to offer itself as a sacrifice to the higher, as a way of coming into relationship with that deeper reality and the deeper truth. If this is a lot already, don't worry. It's also something that I want to say in introduction to this teacher training. Don't worry. Don't worry about catching everything. Don't worry about getting all the Sanskrit words. Don't worry about getting all the context and all the ideas down. In some way, remembering the ideas, remembering the concepts, and being able to, quote the Sanskrit texts and know what the Sanskrit words mean. For me, that comes from love. It doesn't come from, I need to remember this. I need to stuff it away in my storehouse. I need to get it on my spreadsheet. I need to, get it into my memory. It comes from love. It comes from wanting to know everything about this tradition that I love, about this India, this India that I love. It's like I want to know all of her faces, and I want to know all of her secrets and all of her perspectives, and what she looks like, what she sounds like, what she feels like. So my own exploration comes from that. And I encourage you to follow the same path of love and admiration and reverence. We have this emerging understanding in the West of cultural appropriation, what has been done and what continues to be done to extract something from one culture to benefit oneself. And the history of yoga in the West has a lot of cultural appropriation woven into it. The opposite of cultural appropriation is reverence and love. When we love something, when we revere something, we can't extract from it because we care for it. Love is, in a way, us offering, it's the natural human inclination to offer ourselves to the object of our love. Reverence is to say, you are so beautiful that I want to serve you. I want to give myself to you. This is the opposite of appropriation. Now, the nature of the human ego is to appropriate everything. So we can think about macro cultural appropriation in terms of colonialism and the extraction of resources and the extraction of wisdom and the commodification of spiritual traditions and the commercialization of spiritual traditions. The ego on the individual level, you and me, what we do, what our egos tend to do, is to do that to everything, to take every situation, everything that's going on around us, and extract from it something for me. This isn't because we're bad. It's not because we're evil. It's not because we're, bad or evil. It's because we're confused. It's because we don't know who we are. And the society writ large is one big mass of confused ego. And so it's doing the same thing. But we can yell and scream about what society as a whole is doing. And we can look at ourselves and see, okay, how am I participating in this? How am I resonating with this? How is my consciousness aligning with this larger collective tendency? And in the context of yoga, it's one thing to take something and materially benefit from it. It's another thing to say, I'm taking this and I'm going to make myself smarter. I'm going to make myself stronger. I'm going to make myself superior. I'm going to make myself, use this to make myself feel better about myself. I'm going to use this to cover up a sense of lack inside myself. These are things that we do every day. And instead, when we say, I love yoga, I revere yoga, I offer myself to yoga, what does yoga want from me? What does this path that has been so faithfully preserved over thousands of years, what does this path of wisdom, how can I support it? How can I help it? How can I help become a bridge so that the depth of this wisdom reaches more people, so that more people can be touched by it and fall in love with it and be awakened by it? Yoga is not, it's a funny way of putting it, but yoga is not upset. Yoga does not resist or fight against your awakening. Yoga wants you to awaken. Whether you get rich and get famous and get strong and get jacked and get flexible and get smart and get more friends, yoga doesn't care about that so much. But if you realize who you are, if you awaken to the radiance, the unharmable eternal radiance that is you, underneath all these beliefs and habits and behaviors and ideas and thoughts and emotions, underneath all that is an eternal shining flame. Yoga wants you to discover that. And so to offer yourself to yoga is to go on the quest, is to engage in the battle, is to become the sacrifice. This is the opposite of cultural appropriation, reverence and honoring and love. And it's not like there's a black and white simple answer. What does it mean for me to revere yoga? It's going to show up for each person in their own way. And the sincerity of your intention can't be measured, can't be evaluated, can't be judged. Only you know on a certain level whether you're sincere. And we have all kinds of ways of deluding ourselves. That's all part of the picture too. It's all part of being human. The sincerity to penetrate, the sincere desire to penetrate our own self-delusion is the path of yoga. So I said that yoga is a set of practices that support a process toward a state. And that state of yoga, the state of yoga, is the unity of spirit and matter. It's the unity of soul and persona. It's the unity of earth and heaven, the unity of self and God. So all these practices that we do, whatever they are, some practices come from the Indian indigenous wisdom traditions. They've been developed and honed in India. Some practices are mishmash of Western stuff and Indian stuff. Some practices may have nothing to do with India. The question is about yoga is the practice leading us toward the state of union? The union of who I think I am and who I am, the union of myself and God, the union of earth and heaven, the union, the sustained, integrated union. So I may have an experience. I may be in meditation and I may go very deep and I may have an experience, an ecstatic experience of the union of my soul with God. But what happens after that? What happens when I come back and I wake, I come out of my meditation and I go and interact with a family member, or I go to work, or I go to the store? The state of yoga, the state of union, is integrated and sustained and embodied. So it's the union of the deepest truth of who I am with my daily breathing, embodied, interactive, behavioral life. My relationships, what I do. It's just being completely clear, transparent, for that light to shine through at all times. Now, I have not achieved this integrated, enduring, sustained state of yoga. But I'm on a path, I'm on a quest, I'm on a journey. I'm involved in the struggle, and I'm engaged with the sacrifice. And every day, every single day, this is my life. And I'm reaching for and aspiring for and walking towards this state of yoga. And if I look back over the past 25 years, I can easily identify a progression from farther away from the state of yoga, from the state of union, more separated, more individuated, more alone, more unwhole, towards a greater sense of wholeness, of unity, of oneness. When we think about progress, and I mentioned before forces that are supporting the growth towards yoga and forces that are inhibiting it, when we talk about that, the forces that are supporting the growth towards yoga are forces that support wholeness and unity, and forces that push against it are forces that inhibit wholeness and unity. The state of un-yoga is the state of separation. If I want to kind of look at a situation in my life and see how it fits into this journey, I can just look from am I acting, am I thinking, am I relating, am I speaking from a state of wholeness? What if I was completely whole? What if I was completely aligned with and unified with my deepest self? Would I act like that? And then I can see where the limitations are. Maybe limitations in my belief, in my thoughts, in my fears, in my the integration of how real is this in my life. Can you imagine this state? Can you imagine this state of unity? And what implications would it have on your life, daily life? Your life may change as a result of a realization, a progressive realization, in the course of a progressive realization. I mean, your life will change, but it's not like you need to go right now and change your life. So you just imagine your life, your relationships, the structure of your life. How would it be impacted by this kind of realization? And think about it progressively, because I think, at least I don't know if you think this way, but when I first got in touch with yoga, I figured it would just be a very short time, and then I would quickly awaken to the truth of my being, and boom, blast off, done. But my experience is that it's much more progressive. It's much more day by day, breath by breath. And so what would it be for this light of your deeper being to flow into your body, into your mind, into your life? How would it impact? What changes would take place? And what I'm not encouraging you is to anticipate those changes and go make them, because the changes come organically. As you become more whole, the changes will come, because there's no separation ultimately between inside and outside. The shape of your life outside reflects the shape of your life inside. There's no difference. And I'm also not implying that this state of yoga is a state that is free of what we typically think of as suffering and pain. Partly because not only are we one ultimately with ourselves, we are also one with all embodied beings on earth. And so as long as there are other embodied beings on earth that are confused and suffering, that are afraid, as long as there's war, as long as there's hunger, as long as there's people living without homes, and people harming each other, as long as all that's happening, we're a part of that. And so we have to be in relationship with that. And our human heart responds to the suffering of others naturally and organically. And as long as we have a body, there's pain. There's physical pain. There's emotional pain. So those things continue, but our relationship to them changes, because our relationship to ourselves change. Now, just like there are lots of different kinds of practices that can lead toward the state of yoga, there are yogic practices, practices that do come from the indigenous wisdom traditions of the Indian subcontinent, that can be used to further the embodied, sustained state of yoga, or they can be used to build up the ego and to build up the sense of separation and isolation and alienation. They can use, yoga practices, asana practices, pranayama practices can be used to build up a sense of superiority, a sense of self-protection, a sense of, and all of these things that the ego thrives on. So the practices have to exist in context with the state. Are these practices leading me towards the state of yoga? And if they are, then they're yoga practices. And if they're not, then they're not yoga practices. Wherever they came from, whoever came up with them. There's the kind of overarching shape that this training is going to take when it comes to yoga philosophy is that we're going to talk about cosmology. We're going to talk about the fundamental cosmology of the Sanskritic yoga tradition as it's encapsulated in the Rig Veda Samhita. Evolution. The evolution of consciousness is part of this cosmology. Cosmology is like the understanding of the universe and what it is and what are the rules, what's the framework of the universe, and why does it exist, and why do these rules exist, and what's going on here, all that sort of stuff. The evolution of consciousness, cosmic forces of light and darkness, of evolution and counter-evolution. The fact that the universe is responsive and reciprocal. When we reach out to the universe, we have this kind of dogmatic, fundamentalist, materialist view of the universe as dead and stupid. And somehow we miraculously just popped up on this random planet in a dead, stupid universe. But we're smart. Nothing else is smart, just us. In this whole vast millions of galaxies and trillions of stars and planets, we're smart, everything else is dumb. We're awake, everything else is dead. Seems pretty unlikely. And the cosmology of yoga includes that the sun is alive and self-aware. Now, self-aware doesn't mean it's thinking. It doesn't mean it has kind of a cognitive process in the way that we do. But it means that it knows I am. I exist. The earth is alive and self-aware. The Milky Way galaxy is alive and self-aware. All the celestial bodies, all the trees, all the rocks, everything is part of a universe that is alive. Everything is made out of consciousness, according to the yoga traditions. And so everything is made out of consciousness. That means it is consciousness fundamentally at its core. And this universe is the collection of all wisdom that it has ever existed or will ever exist. It's the embodiment of all wisdom. And it loves and it knows and it creates and it responds. And when we reach out to it, it responds to us. This is part of the cosmology, that we live in a responsive universe. Sacrifice is part of this cosmology, that the entire universe exists by sacrifice and grows. All growth happens by sacrifice. Purification, that our human existence is a process of purification, of refinement, of casting away that which is delusional and unclear and impure, and increasingly revealing the purity of our radiance. And that there are practices and structures and supports for this process of purification and revelation. And we're going to go through these different aspects of the cosmology and talk about them. And we're also going to explore different texts, major texts of the yoga traditions. The Rig Veda, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, the Puranas, and the Tantras. So that's it. That's what we're going to do. And I hope that you are as excited as I am. And even if you're not, I hope you're curious. I hope that you're curious about yourself, about yoga, about the history of yoga, the philosophy of yoga, and what it might mean for you. Because all this stuff, you can read 1 million texts and translations of 1 million texts, and you can think about 1 million yogic ideas. If it's an abstraction, if it doesn't touch you, if it doesn't transform you, then it's not really yoga. It's not really accomplishing the purpose of yoga. The purpose of yoga is for you to be transformed, for your understanding of yourself to be transformed, your understanding of your capacities to be transformed. That's the purpose of yoga and why it exists. That's the blessing that yoga wants to give to you. And so I hope that you're curious, and I hope that you're open and ready to receive that blessing, that bountiful blessing, because it's flowing. It's flowing all the time, with every breath, with every morning and every evening, and every passing of the seasons. The flow of yoga is pouring down upon us and blessing us. And when we turn to it and awaken to it and receive it with gratitude, our lives are absolutely transformed. And so that's what my hope is that we can do together, is turn to this blessing, invite it into our lives, and explore together what kind of impact that has. So I'll leave you with that. I'll be back from India soon, and I think in 2 weeks from now, we'll have our first yoga philosophy session, and I look forward to it. And in those sessions, we'll have some more interactivity. We'll have some journaling exercises, some meditations, some conversations, some questions and answers. We'll be exploring together. So in the meantime, please do the reading assignments before the sessions begin so that you come prepared. I wrote all those things so that I wouldn't have to say them, so that we could spend our time together doing something else besides me laying the groundwork like that. So please do take the time to read before the session, and I will see you in 2 weeks, and welcome, and I look forward to where we go together. Namaskar.